Zelda 2 stands up there as one of, if not the most interesting entry into the series. Rather than taking the 2D or 3D approach that we all know today, it decided to take on a side-scroller style with more traditional RPG elements. And while this game isn't exactly the best of the best in the series for me, I still have to pay it high respects, because this game started a big legacy in the series. You know, side quests, the magic meter, using magical items to open up the final dungeon, you know, all of that Zelda goodness. Although, despite the fact that it's easily one of the most important entries, these days, this game remains as one of the most hated games in the series. Why? Because fans consider it to be the hardest in the series. And indeed, Zelda 2 is pretty tough, but is it really that tough compared to modern Zelda standards? Well, let's just have a gander, shall we? Oh, and before we start, keep in mind that this is from what I've experienced, so what may have happened to you doesn't exactly mean it happened to me. First of all, let's take a look at the combat. The game's combat is centered around three things: standing, crouching, and jumping. Most of the enemies follow these rules too, as you can see them striking high, low, and a few jumping. Now, it is true that these enemies deal a lot of damage, but it's never really gotten too hard. It's a matter of paying attention, and even then, there's a few enemies that are pretty dang easy. Iron Knuckles, considered to be the bane of many, is one of the easiest enemies by far. All there is to it is a matter of jumping and striking on the way down, as your sword will easily manage to strike them in the head. Even my personal least favorite monster throughout the adventure, the Daira, is easy. While I didn't really notice it at first, both the yellow and red variants have a pattern that isn't too hard to figure out. Once you just think 1, 2, 3, strike, it becomes a cakewalk. The only thing you'll have to watch out for is when the red variants throw the second axe right after the first sometimes. The combat in this game eventually drops down to joke levels once you get the down stab. Now, if you didn't feel like putting up with a monster, you could just bounce right over it, no penalty. There is the forward momentum to watch out for, but even this can be manipulated if you just press the opposite direction on the way up. Even the dreaded stallfoes that keep trying to get in your way can be pretty much completely ignored. And this is not to say that every monster is easy. If I were to be completely honest, the flying enemies gave me the most trouble. Seriously, I will always hate you, MOAs. Then there's magic. Holy crap, does the magic make this game even easier. Shield grants you double defense, jump allows you to become an NBA star, and life fills up like half of your health bar. Now, this is a bit funny coming from a guy who died approximately 27 times. But really, a lot of those were my fault. I saved way too much in this game. And every time you save, you are sent back to the starting area with Zelda. And sometimes, I forgot that I was really close to leveling up, and I accidentally reset the counter by saving. As a result, I eventually started to grow impatient at times and started rushing, which usually resulted in me getting killed by an enemy when I really shouldn't have, or me just mistiming a jump and falling in a pit like an idiot. Although, there were some really hard parts. The third to final boss, Barba, killed me so many times it had to be at least like 8. There's also the absolutely absurd Valley of Death, which also farmed like 8 deaths off of me. But speaking of vitality, let's take a look at that for a second. In total, you can only hold 8 hearts. If you lose all of them, you don't game over like any other title, you instead lose 1 of 3 lives. It's kind of like falling in a pit in, say, Ocarina of Time. Sure, that drop technically killed you, but by the game's standards, you didn't actually die, you just lost a chunk of health. This is how I view Zelda 2's handling with death. Yeah, you lost a life, but it isn't game over yet. You're still given another chance, albeit this fake death system is slightly crazier. Dying in Zelda 2, to me, isn't truly you dying until you've lost your last life. I mean, in Zelda 1, you could choose whether to start at the beginning of the dungeon or at the start of the map after hitting a game over. And while Zelda 2 would just send you straight to the beginning, minus the final dungeon, it's basically the exact same thing. So, while I died roughly 27 times, I died for real approximately 9 times. Heck, it's probably less since I've saved so much and that resets my life count. Not only are the fake deaths not true failure, but the game has the courtesy to fill up your health as well as your magic completely. It's starting to not even sound that hard anymore. And before you brush it off as you're just making excuses to make the game sound easier, well, no, I'm really not. In a Kotaku interview with Shigeru Miyamoto, yes, I actually found something useful on Kotaku, he mentioned that there was a ton of technical hoops and hurdles to go through in development. It became difficult to really add anything to the game. I mean, really, why do you think you could only get 4 heart containers compared to the first game, where you could get 13 of them? It seems that with so much space taken up on the cartridge/Famicom disc, there's going to be certain elements that are lacking. But that's not the devs' fault at all. So, with a severe lack of space, I feel it's safe to assume that the live system was put into place as a way to extend your life bar, since more hearts couldn't be implemented. Though this is just a theory, so take it with a grain of salt if you will. So now comes the deal breaker. The final blow. The man of your shadows, the evil within, Dark Link. I'm not going to lie. For a while, I was a bit stumped by this. He was really tough, fast, and it seemed like I couldn't do anything to beat him, other than using the corner trick, which is literally cheating because you're disadvantaging the boss. While I didn't think that one boss alone is enough to make the entire game the hardest in the series, I felt that this probably was the hardest boss in the series. So, for a little while, I gave up. I just did the corner trick and decided that I couldn't do it. Until I learned something. I was watching a playthrough by Dragonwind Den on the Zelda 2 mod simply called Zelda 2 Part 2. What he had done at the end of the game had intrigued me. This boss battle didn't allow for the corner trick because of lava placed around it, so you had to fight Dark Link. What Dragonwind had done is, well, stayed mostly in place, not even crouching and swinging at Dark Link, and he beat him. So I was curious. I went back to Zelda 2 and tried the same thing on him myself. And guess what happened? Yep, I defeated Dark Link. So yes, moving around and crouching literally makes the fight harder. It's not like you're cheating either, you're not disadvantaging Dark Link at all. He has plenty of space to fight you. Though, the Dark Link fight does break the rule of using a combination of crouching and jumping, as you can beat him just standing up. So yes, whether you're cheating or not, Dark Link is a pretty easy boss. But again, that's just me. This is not trying to put down others that consider this game to be the hardest in the series. If it's crazy tough for you, then it is what it is, no shame. But it's not really like gameplay-wise you can compare much to other titles. I mean, most of the comparisons are purely conceptual. The difficulty really can't be compared, even coming from a guy who thinks that the game is not really as hard as others say. But do you know what this means for me? Oracle of Seasons is still the hardest Zelda game I've played, and the Oracle series as a whole has the hardest final boss I've fought in any Zelda game. Ha! Take that, popular opinions. Again, I must shout out to Dragonwind Den for showing me the simple Dark Link tactic. Seriously dude, you're awesome. As always, I thank you all for watching. I'm RoberOnocle and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.